neighborhood, but he ran out and found some little kids to play with. And this is when we were living in Connecticut. We were all born in Boston. Everybody in the family was born in Boston. We moved when Mark was very small, about 3 or 4. We moved to Connecticut, which is the house that my parents still live in. And there weren't really a lot of kids, so we were all very close. We hung out a lot in the kitchen. We played a lot of cards. We were in the backyard playing croquet and riding bikes to the pool. Mark was a big comic.
He's gonna be outside like 10 minutes.
And yeah, he started. Mark had 2 problems that outside of the racism of America that contributed to his dying, and they were that he was bipolar and probably wasn't diagnosed for a long time, and he was probably self-medicating, and the way he was doing that was with drugs. So I think he started, like a lot of us, in middle school with kind of recreational drugs, and then it became a problem as he got older.
We have been talking to Uncle Chris, and he was diagnosed with bipolar when he was in his 20s, and did attend various rehab facilities to get help throughout his life. I think I remember at the funeral, Christine Bond saying that he fought a good fight, and I think that's very well put. So we're gonna let Katie speak to who Mark was as a father and husband, and then I can speak a little bit to who he was as my uncle.
Katie, you want to talk about Mark?
Yeah, I'll try my best. There's a lot I can say, but it's still hard for me to talk about him. So when I met him, it was only for 2 weeks, but it was good enough for me to know a lot about him. The way he came to me, the way he was with everybody else, it was like impressive. I think that's what actually attracts me for him, because the time was too short. As you can see, 2 weeks. And but he was there. Everything I was trying to do, he was there with me. When he saw me cooking, he was there engaging on the cooking, because that's what he loved to do. And every time he did something for me, he was feeling more amazing by seeing me doing it. And the way he talked to people, even to strangers, to me was impressive. That was the type of person that he was. He was in the country for the first time, and he was about 38, 39, I'm not sure about, but he came to everyone and talked, and people that I don't even know, I'm walking, I say hello, but I'm walking, doing my thing, and he's still there talking with the person. I have to come to him and, Mark, you don't even know the person, why you keep engaging? That he's just laughing. Then he was engaged with everything there, and that's where he wants to live. Actually, he told all the family, you all know that he say he found the spot that he wants to be with his family. He also was saying that he found the person that he wants to share his life with. That was me, and that's what he did. He said it, and he did it. He came and brought me. Maybe 6 months later or 10 months later, I was here. And then as a husband, he was the greatest person that I had never been with. Even when problem comes, he's still managing not to get his problem over me, because a lot of time he was like, it's my thing, I deal with, I don't want you to be a part of it. But I was there. The person that he was and the husband that he was made me stay there for 5 years of marriage. I was there. I didn't feel like leaving in 1 second because I didn't have reason to. I felt like that he had a problem that he needs help with. And I was there to help him. And he was the husband that I wanted to have. And I had it. So, and I stick with him. We decided to have a child. And when we got a baby, he was an amazing father. Even before Simon was born, he started having connection with him. He used to read a book to him every day. Sometimes I had to say, why you are talking to him? He's listening. He was doing his thing. He believed that he was listening. And then he was doing. And after he was born, he's still doing it. He was there reading to him every single day. Not just reading. I remember he gets up in the morning. The first thing that he does is grab him, change him, bath him, feed him, and talk to him like he's talking to a grown-up. To me, it was a little bit like, why are you talking to him like that? He said that he wants to teach him. And that was the time to teach him. And it felt like he was spending his time with him, basking him in the sun, crawling when he was crawling, playing a bat. We had video of him bathing Simon. The bath usually lasts 30, 40 minutes because it was more like having fun, like they were in a pool. And he was so small. When he was 14 months, that's when he died. He just started to take his few steps. And when he started walking, he said, I'm not gonna put my baby in a walker. He's gonna walk natural. And that's what he did. He used to put Simon on his feet. Simon's feet on his feet, you know what I'm talking about? And walk all the way in the living room. They walk, they drop. They watched Simon's favorite show. It was his favorite show. It was Elmo and Dinosaur all day long. He used to make Simon spaghetti with tomato sauce just to see how Simon make all that mess with the spaghetti sauce. And he used to laugh so hard when Simon, you know, he could have eaten the spaghetti. The spaghetti, it was hanging all over his face. And he just laughed so hard. I still see the smile. It's too bad that Simon couldn't remember. He was too young to remember all that his father do. When I tell him about the story now, sometimes he say, I wish he's still here. Because I can feel and I can see what kind of relationship they would have if he's still here, what kind of connection. And I wish that too. I wish he was there to see him. It bothers me, it hurts me when I see boys with their father, but mine, no. Sometimes I feel like a lot of times when I don't see boys on him, I see like he's, being tough, something like that. I feel like he didn't have that toughness that the boys get from the father. He don't have it because it was me, you know, for the most of the time. So he didn't really know what it felt to have a father. And I remember when I put him in a preschool, my entire time, I spend home with him. I don't work. The family support me. Thank God for them. I don't work. I just stay home with him. It was Mark's wish for me, or one of us, to take care of the baby and one of us to work. But then when he was 3, I put him in a preschool. You know, has to go to school at some point. I put him in a preschool, and one day he came home, he asked me, "Mommy, how come everyone has a daddy? I don't have one." So I don't know what to say. And it was still so fresh. I don't want to cry, but I couldn't hold myself either. I just don't know what to say to him. And I didn't feel that was a question for a 3 years old to ask, because he didn't deserve it. At that moment, I feel so angry also, because I feel like that was not right for you child to come to you, ask you where is his father, when he could have have it. He could have have it. He could have still have it. But just because people can just take people's life and somebody else has to suffer, and we're talking about a child? So I still owing him that answer. He knows he's dead, but he doesn't know how he was killed. He don't know. He doesn't know, because it's not easy for a mother to tell, to see and tell his child the reason why he doesn't have the father. It would be different if he was dead or sickness like his grandfather. It was hard for him. He cried, he shouted, he got depressed. He got over because he knew that he was sick. But on the case of Mark, it's not easy, because he's gonna ask me questions, and now I don't want to answer those questions to make him feel the way I feel right now. I don't just feel hurt. I feel angry, because I didn't think it was necessary. Even when something is wrong, I believe there's justice. I believe that's why there's court, that's why there's George, to fix things when it's not done correctly, to correct people when they do something wrong. And that's what I felt when that happened. He was wrong. I felt that it was a time, if he was wrong, for them to correct him. I'll prefer him in the jail by now, until now, than dead. Because at least we would see him or talk to him and have the hope that we can actually live together again and enjoy his child, and we can all enjoy it, you know. But it would have been much different. I got depressed. I got to the point that a lot of time I was feeling like my life didn't have a meaning. I don't want to leave. My only hope was Sammy, because he was the one who was making me get through the day. Because I felt that, what is the point if I don't leave? How is gonna live with no father and no mother? I felt that he needs me, and that pushed me through here. And I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting for Mark justice. It's not easy for me to do this. But Mark has a person, has a husband, has a father. He didn't deserve the way he died. I'm not gonna sit here and tell my child he was shot. Not just one time, but several times. Not when the car, not when he was even driving. But when he stopped, or when they crashed him already, but they're still shooting him. That's what I'm gonna tell him? No, I'm not gonna tell him that I want justice.
Yeah, I mean, I think Katie's getting at what happened, which we should probably get into. So Mark was in a stopped car in Roxbury, was it? Roxbury, Massachusetts, with another person. When he was approached by the police, he began to flee immediately, I'm sure out of fear. And this is a high-speed chase that went from Suffolk County in Boston to Plymouth County, where it eventually ended with Mark getting out of the car with, okay, well, not getting out of the car, but being shot 5 times by Christopher Carr. And one of the most frustrating or unjust things that happened after is that there's just a complete lack of transparency around the investigation. It took months for the autopsy to be revealed to the family. The footage of the chase was not released to the family, and
The belongings were not given.
the belongings were not given. And something that Uncle Chris wanted us to include is that the dispatcher did order the officers to stop because they were out of their jurisdiction, and those orders were not, there was no compliance, and that the chase continued outside of their jurisdiction. There was no reason for Mark to be stopped. There was no reason for him to be followed, and there was no reason for him to be chased, especially outside of county lines.
And he was sitting in, after the high-speed chase, he was kind of cornered by the cops,
Cars, right?
several cop cars, and his car wasn't working. He banged into the cop car, I think, and the airbags deployed, and he was sitting in his car, and with the airbags deployed, and no weapon. Mark never had a weapon. He was not a violent criminal ever. He was a drug addict who did dumb stuff to get money for drugs. So he wasn't a violent criminal, so he didn't have a gun, so he was just sitting there. And Chris Carr, who's a white Boston police officer with a history of brutalizing Black and brown bodies and still on the force then and on the force now, got out of his car and came around, and he fired through the passenger window and killed Mark. He shot him twice, and then he went around to the driver's side and shot him 2 or 3 more times. And the excuse that these cops always say is that their lives were in danger, that the car was lunging. This is verbs they use a lot. The car is lunging. If you look at a lot of these cases where cops shoot unarmed Black and brown people, the same words, the car was lunging at them. The car wasn't lunging.
That the vehicle is a deadly weapon.
The vehicle's a deadly weapon. And he used that as a reason to shoot. And it's just so hard. This case has been so hard because, well, 1, because Mark is a Black man. 2, he's not a Boy Scout. 3, we live in New York. My brother lives in Montreal. My parents live in Connecticut. Katie lives in Massachusetts. It's been all over. And the cops are really good at this, and they close ranks and they hide evidence and they don't comply. They didn't have the decency to tell Katie that her husband was killed. They never went. They told my mother. They didn't tell Katie. So it's wrong on so many levels to kill somebody who has a drug problem, who's not a violent criminal, to disobey all these laws. You're not supposed to shoot at a moving vehicle. You're not supposed to go outside city limits. If your dispatcher calls off your chase, you're supposed to stop. You know, this guy was in violation of all these things. And then to add insult to injury, one of the things that the cops do is to get ahead of any potential lawsuit is they'll award the cop a medal. So Christopher Carr, months later, Jamal, you can tell us exactly when, is awarded as a decorated cop. So it's just insult after insult after insult. And then the family is left with a hole in their family and a hole in their heart. And you have to fight against all this bullshit and red tape and bureaucracy and criminalizing of the person that you love, that you know shouldn't have been on a high-speed chase, but God, he did not deserve to be shot like a dog.
Yes, they awarded Officer Chris Carr the BPD, the Schroeder Brothers Memorial Medal, the Department Medal of Honor, the Boston Police Relief Association Memorial Award. This is like the highest honor. They gave it to both him and his partner, Officer Christopher Carr and Detective Kenneth Audio. And specifically, this award was given for what the BPD at this point is calling their heroic behavior in ending this thing. And it's really disgusting too, because the narrative here that they give to talk about the thing doesn't even match the initial narrative, the press accounts. They have about 4 different stories about how this thing started, and you know, and it's all par for the course. Once again, for the family, you know, when we get into sharing files, if you would like me to share this with the group, I can most certainly share the PDF so everyone can see it. If you'd rather not, we could do that. But you know, if y'all like to go ahead on, I know you said you had the slideshow or whatever else. I want to make sure that we're getting your story, you know what I mean, completely.
Yeah, we have a slideshow. It's just photos, so we can share the screen and continue to talk. So I'll do that right now.
These will be pictures of Mark through his life. And
May I talk under the slideshow?
Yes.
Karen and Avery? Okay.
Please, or you can go ahead. I'm just working.
Well, what Katie said, I'm Christine Vaughn. I was the babysitter for the McMullen children who grew into family. And what Katie said and what I know about Mark and what the family knows, it can be summed up in the words that Michael Jackson sang. Like a comet blazing across the evening sky, gone too soon. Like a rainbow fading in the twinkling of an eye, gone too soon. Mark was shiny and sparkly and splendidly bright. Here one day, gone one night. Like the loss of sunlight on a cloudy afternoon, gone too soon. And if anybody in the world wants to understand why we are so enraged, it is war on African-American men. And I give you one example. The white boy that killed 9 people in a church got taken to Burger King because he was hungry. White kids can have guns and shoot at the police, and they get slapped on the buttocks and they get taken home. Our babies come home in a body bag. So when we're talking police reform, it's got to happen on several levels. And one level certainly is that the African-American community is the 9th largest buying power, and we've got to hold our money and target it. Because the only thing that this United States of America understands is money. And I just question, how is it that this consistently happens? What is the rage? What did African men do except to be fabulous and fine and everything that they aren't And that's why it's war on African American males. So when we're talking police reform, we want the good police, but where are they? What is happening? And so this, we want justice and we expect justice.
All right, so hopefully I should be sharing.
Oh, yeah.
You see it? Okay.
Mhm.
Let me see if I can get that full screen.
If you press present in the white box on, yeah, that should do it.
All right. So I'm gonna mute myself, and you could just tell me when to hit next. If y'all want to say something about each photo, you could just tell me next, and I'll just hit the next slide.
Okay, that was marked at about 3.
Yeah.
Marilyn, you want to talk?
I just wanted to say that Mark's mother and I were friends, have been friends since we were 10 years old. So Mark was like a child, my child. So I feel not as quite as much as his mom feel, but I feel this gut-wrenching anger that this child, I call him a child because he was a child to me, to be murdered like that. Just wasn't shot, he was murdered. And I'm very, very angry, very angry. And I'm tired of our kids, our young people, our old people being shot by the police officer. And I've been angry and I've been stopped by police. My son was yanked up and thrown up against the wall. For what? They thought he was somebody else. Ridiculous. I'm done. So I'm ready to join whatever force that we can come up with. And I agree with Christine, who says money speaks volumes. I will not spend my money where I'm not welcomed. And we really need to support our Black businesses. That's all I have to say. I'm too upset.
That's in honor of Mark. And until and any other individual of the hundreds of African Americans that are murdered by the police that are paid to protect and serve, but they're not protecting and serving brown, tan, and Black people. And white folk can get away with stuff. Understand our murder. And George Floyd helped America to see what the African, look at our baby. Look at our precious.
Too fast.
Look at him. Gorgeous, kind, brilliant, magnetic. Merkel, the gun drop. Wow. Color didn't matter. He loved everybody. And that's what Katie attested to. Everybody knew. Everybody was drawn to him. Why is he dead? Karen, like you said, not a criminal, a drug addict. There's a difference. Where's the compassion? And if police officers understand, we got a lot of police officers that came from the Ku Klux Klan and the white supremacists. Where's the testing to make sure a doctor can't operate unless the doctor goes to school? Why aren't we making standards for police? That's what we're talking about, police reform and getting rid of the bad cops that take away from the good. I had 2 uncles, both of them were the first African deputy superintendents of the Boston Police Department. I don't hate police, but police hate us. And what are we gonna do about it?
Hi.
And marching is critical to raise awareness. Hold our wallets in honor of Mark McMullen.
Hi, this is King Downing. I would just like to make a suggestion. I'm seeing some very moving pictures and I'm seeing them for the first time. And I would just like to know if the family would be okay to go back and comment on some of them, and then maybe we can save some of our expressions of grief and outrage and next steps until after the show.
Sure.
Sure. If you want to.
Okay, so that's Mark is the little one. Mark is usually the littlest one in these pictures with the yellow Star Trek shirt. He was trying to copy Chris, who's a big Trekkie.
Blue Star Trek shirt behind him.
And yeah, Chris is behind with the blue. Chris thought he was Mr. Spock. And my other brother, Alan, with the white pants, my Uncle Butchie with the black shirt, and me. That was in, we were flying rockets in a school park. You can go. Next. That's little Tony, my two first cousins, Mark with the orange pants in the middle, Chris, Alan, Mark, and me in our front yard in Connecticut. You can go next. That was at Avery's
My 5th grade graduation.
dinner, my father and mother, me and Mark. Next, you can go. That was a Christmas time in Connecticut with Chris and Mark, my nieces Courtney and Kaya,
And me.
and Avery. That's the trip where we went to Cape Verde. We went in 2008, 2006.
Where he met Katie.
That's where he met Katie. And we're out visiting newly discovered cousins. Next.
On Nana's side.
That's us in Fogo, my grandfather's islands, Cape Verde. It was a great trip. That's again in Cape Verde with some more family.
Uncle Chris on the left.
Next. Mark looking over the produce. He was a tyrant in the kitchen. He was a great chef, and he was quite the tyrant in the kitchen.
And a germaphobe.
And a germaphobe. But
Hence the
a
hand
super
sign.
generous cook, would cook you anything. He didn't eat meat because he liked animals. But he would make you meat. He would, my mother was telling a story about shortly before he was killed, they were driving down the street and there was a turtle in the middle of the road. And my mother Mark made my mother stop the car and get out and get the turtle and drive a half a mile to go put it back in a pond because he was worried about this turtle.
Did he make your mother go out and get the turtle?
No.
I'm just playing.
Next picture. That was me, my mother, and Mark in Cape Verde. It's a volcanic island, so that was near the black dirt is near the volcano.
It's more of Cape Verde.
That's cousin Xenia. That's the house we stayed in Cape Verde. Isn't that the house, Katie?
Yes.
Next. That's us again in Cape Verde. Same. That's Mark and Katie and Simon. Mark really adored Simon with all his heart. Next. That's Mark reading Simon's book. Simon's into the book.
The eyes was on it.
Next. And that was one of the last pictures we had of Mark.
At the museum.
At the amusement park. It was probably 3 or 4
4
days before he died, right, Katie?
Yeah, we used to go to the museum a lot because Simon was so into pictures, into staring and looking at things. So we used to take him a lot to the museum.
Very nice.
That I think was the last day of his life in Connecticut.
The last picture on the merry-go-round, yeah.
Yeah. I
And
remember we was there, we went to the park,
Yeah.
to the museum park.
Yeah, well, the family, Mark had just gotten out of rehab and we were all in Connecticut and we all went to the amusement park for the day. Mark made everybody their own lunch. You know, if you wanted, you wanted cheese and you wanted mayonnaise, everybody had their own lunch. And we had a great day. And the day after, he told my mother, you know, he's like, Mom, I'm good. I want to go home. I want to be a father. I want to be a husband. He was, the last morning I saw him, he was sitting at the kitchen table writing out a business plan. He always wanted to have
His own restaurant.
a restaurant in Martha's Vineyard called the Copper Lobster. And he was writing out his business plan for that. And the next day he left my mother's house, went back, took Simon home, gave him a bath, you know, made dinner for Katie. And then he was supposed to go back into a halfway house, but he never made it. I guess he wanted to go use one more time. And that's when the police found him outside in Roxbury and started to chase him in the car. It was a car chase.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Simon at about, how old is he there, Katie? 3?
3.
Yeah.
He was about 3.
And by that
He
point,
was at the slide at the playground in Queensland.
yeah, at that point, he didn't have a father.
I unfortunately had to tell Katie that Mark was killed. It was very difficult to tell her that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nobody ever come to tell me. It was afternoon, late afternoon when I got to find out. Because they all are like, you know, caring and, you know, they all knew, but they don't want to tell me by the phone. Mary came to tell me while I was expecting him to come home. When she knocked on the door, I thought it was him. I thought he may, you know, lost the key or something. But the way I saw Mary, I thought something was wrong. It was hard. It was hard to find out. When she first said his name, my first thought was that he got into accident. But I didn't expect no one to come and tell me that he was actually dead.
So, no, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
And that, and believe it or not, he was in the news. That's another thing. He was in the news, and I could have probably see that, you know, saw the whole thing in the news. Yeah, I had the TV on. I still thank God for not having that chance. I don't want to see. I'm expecting him to come home, and then to go see him in the news like that and find out that on the news. Because a friend of mine that live in Milton, that's Mark's and Karen's and the family, we used to have good connection. Her name is Tikinya. She told me later, after things got calm, that he was in the news. Exactly that time that I had the TV on where my Simon was watching TV. I was like, if I was watching the news, I would have found that out on the news.
I was in high school when all of this happened. I was a sophomore in high school, and I told one of my friends, and in minutes she had found articles and news clips, and I was really angry that that was the footprint that was left of him, and was quiet about it for a really long time. And I think it's terrible that that's all there is when you Google his name. He was a much bigger presence than that. He was everything to us in so many ways.
If I could just take this this time here, because it's now 6:49, and I want to make sure that we get to some of the nitty gritty, which we already have described some of the really egregious parts of this case. Chase outside of city limits, high speed chase, pursuing after the dispatcher has told you to cease, right? All of the shooting in a moving vehicle, the holes in the 3 or 4 different versions of the story that they've told to justify themselves, right? So now here we are, and this thing happened all those years ago. As y'all know, and as you said, you didn't even get the return of the belongings. I thank God that years later I was able to help that happen. But the fact that there was such a long period of time in between that was just, ridiculous as well. So now that we're here now in this moment, 2020, and all eyes are focused on police reform, I'd like to take this time to bring in a couple of folks to kind of talk about, what some of your options might be, or like, what, some good advice. Where do we go from here? One of those people is Rasan Hall, and I'm putting Rasan first only because he has another meeting to get to. But Rasan Hall is the director of the racial justice for the ACLU. So Rasan, if you would unmute your mic and give us something.
Thank you, Jamal, and to the McMullen family and friends, my deepest and heartfelt condolences and love for you all, because although this was some time ago, I'm sure the pain is very present and very real. And what we're seeing currently in contemporary society with policing is just an even more stark reminder of how problematic the system of policing is. And so I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all this evening in the midst of all of this pain. I'll be brief, because I think there is a unique opportunity that exists that it doesn't speak to redressing your individual harm, but it does speak to changing the larger system and structure of policing. And it's far from perfect, but there is a unique opportunity here in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts legislature is considering reforms to policing in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. People in Massachusetts took to the streets. There were marches, there were protests, and the Massachusetts legislature attempted to respond to it by putting forward some pieces of legislation to address very quickly, because our legislative session was supposed to end on July 31st, but they attempted to address some important, but what they thought as easy wins in policing. And so there are a couple of pieces that I want to talk about, but then I'll say something more about the legislative process and where we are in the process, and then maybe make offer some suggestions of ways that Mark's life, not just his death, but Mark's life can be honored. And so the Senate put forward a bill that was pretty progressive. And some of the elements of that were the creation of a POST system, which stands for Peace Officer Standards and Trainings. And Jamal can tell you much more about that later. But essentially, it's a way of licensing or delicensing or decertifying police officers. Massachusetts is only one of 4 states that does not have a POST system. It's not perfect, because Minnesota, where George Floyd was murdered, has a POST system, and it didn't stop that from happening. But some of the provisions in the Senate bill were very strong, stronger than what we've seen in other places in the country. There was also requirement to stop racial profiling and collect data on racial profiling, make some investments in workforce development instead of criminalizing people. There was also limits on use of force that were introduced, banning chokeholds, banning the use of no-knock warrants or limiting the use of no-knock warrants and tear gas, but also creating a duty to intervene when an officer sees one of their colleagues engaged in the use of excessive force or unjustified deadly force, and also a necessity or exhaustion requirement before using deadly force, so meaning that you have to exhaust all other means before using deadly force. But one of the biggest provisions of this bill, which has been a sticking point, is the limits on qualified immunity. And I see Attorney Howard Friedman is on as well, and he can tell you much more about qualified immunity. But essentially, qualified immunity, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a legal doctrine that exists that protects police officers from liability when they have violated someone's constitutional rights or other rights, because the law was not clearly established that their conduct was a violation of the law. And the way that the courts have interpreted what clearly established means over time has come to the point where basically, unless a police officer has done pretty much the exact same thing and got sued and had a court say that was a violation of a person's rights, then the law wasn't clearly established. And police officers are consistently granted qualified immunity. And I think Attorney Friedman can tell you more about one of the barriers is attorneys are less likely to take cases because the problem with qualified immunity is like there's no way to win because the police aren't going to be held liable for their misconduct. And so that was what was in the Senate bill. The House bill came forward and it had some of the same provisions. It had the decertification commission in there, but the fight really started around qualified immunity, and lawmakers were overrun with calls from police officers, police chiefs associations, and police unions. They finally put out a bill that had a watered down version of limits on qualified immunity. Now, there's people out in the streets who are demanding the elimination of qualified immunity. This piece of legislation was just saying, like, let's just limit it. Because the police were fighting it so much, that tells you that it would make a difference. The thing that they protest the most is the thing that we probably need to do. But the House passed their bill. And so now they're in conference committee. And the conference committee is made up of 6 legislators who are reconciling the difference between the 2 bills. The session was supposed to end on July 31st, but because of this and a bunch of other things that they didn't get to, because these police reform bills kind of sucked all the air out of the building, they've extended the session until December 31st. One of the things that is missing in this conversation around limits on qualified immunity is the voice of the victims of police violence. Because right now, the narrative in the press is the people who are going to be impacted by these changes are police. But nobody's talking about the victims of police violence. The fact that victims of police violence or their loved ones can't have their day in court. And that's what the ACLU and other advocacy organizations have really been pushing for. And so, I can circle back with Jamal and other members of the family, and King, it's good to see you too, brother. It's been a while, and can talk in more detail about what that advocacy can look like. But I am so appreciative that you all are using this moment to really talk about Mark's life and use it as an opportunity to bring about change. And so the changes that might happen in the legislature may not bring recompense for what happened to Mark, but it can certainly have an effect on changing how policing happens. It's not going to be immediate, but what my colleague Matt Siegel at the ACLU calls the architecture of policing. The reason police do a lot of the things that they do is because the law has defined what is acceptable. It has shaped the contours of policing, and qualified immunity is a big part of that. And so to the extent that you all are willing to talk about Mark and what happened to him and the injustice of it all, that can help push legislators. So, I think it's the only problem is I don't know what the window is, because the legislators are working, they're trying to resolve it now, so they could come out with a bill tomorrow and it might be done. But they might also be working to get past the September primary on September 1st. So, I do have to jump off to join another call, but I'm more than willing to stay in touch and talk about what that can look like.
So thank you so much. I'll put y'all in contact for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, for whatever it's worth, and from a standpoint of full disclosure, I used to be a prosecutor in Suffolk County DA's office for 8 years, and I actually worked with Chris Carr. He was an investigator and a colleague at the time, and so just so you all hear from me now, instead of finding out later, oh, like this Rasan person, like he actually knows Chris Carr. So I'll put that out there. But, my own personal relationship that I had with him when I worked in the DA's office does not inform my perspective of the injustice of what happened and how wrong what he did was. So I'll say that. And I'm also an ordained reverend. And so with that, I will say, God bless you. And you all are in my thoughts and prayers.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, bro. So yes, I'm definitely gonna make that connection and whatnot, and keeping it moving right along. I would like to now go to who Rasan mentioned, Attorney Howard Friedman, just to get some of his comments and anything that he may have to offer as well.
Sure. I mean, first, this is a tragedy, and it's a tragedy that shouldn't have happened, but happens all too often. In terms of qualified immunity, I think Rasan said it about as well as I can. It's a concept that started eliminating a few cases, and it's just grown so that it can gobble up almost any case. We need a strong state civil rights act, because the Supreme Court has limited and limited again our constitutional rights, particularly with regard to police pursuits. It started with a case, County of Sacramento versus Lewis, where police were pursuing a motorcycle because of squealing tires. As a result of the high-speed chase, the motorcycle hit a police car, and the passenger, who had done nothing wrong, was killed. And the Supreme Court said, no constitutional violation. There was no, it didn't shock the conscience of the Supreme Court judges. And unfortunately, very little does. And in police pursuits, they have essentially said, a pursuit is so dangerous the police can bump the car off the road or just kill the driver. Now, it would make a lot more sense, and most police policies would say, you stop the pursuit. You'll find the person later. First of all, squealing tires versus a death, it doesn't even make any sense. So, it would be great if we had a statute here that didn't require us to follow the rules of the Supreme Court, didn't qualified immunity. What Rasan said about the statute, one thing he didn't mention is today, in the Boston Globe, there was a full-page ad by the Boston Police Patrolmen's Union telling people to contact their legislators to say, we don't want this bill, it's too soon, go back and figure it out later. And so what that tells me is it's probably a good idea for those of us who support the bill to let our representatives, our state senators know that, no, police need to be held accountable, and the union is always going to oppose these things. But when we talk about accountability, there has to be some way to actually stop misconduct, because, one of the things that's sort of striking to me in this case is the police officers didn't follow their rules. They shouldn't have done a high-speed pursuit outside of Boston. They didn't listen to the dispatcher. And then, and this happens all too often in our cases, the police officers are given a badge of honor and a medal for violating the rules. And it's terrible. for Mark and you and all of the family, but also the message that it sends to other police officers. Even if you violate what the dispatcher is telling you, they say, end the pursuit, you don't, you end up killing someone and getting a badge for it. It absolutely sends the wrong message. What happens, I think, is that police know that the public in general isn't really saying much, and the police unions are always pushing for things to be in their favor. Now is a moment in time when everyone is thinking about how police could be held more accountable. So it's important, I think, for all of us to let people know how we feel, and particularly, people who've been victims, and let them know that it's not just something that's a theory. Police officers have damaged other people's lives. So, I don't want to spend too much time, but that's my view. If people have other questions, legal questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Yeah, I actually have one. Might I be permitted?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. I'm sorry to interject so abruptly, but first I want to say I'm a friend of Karen, and I'm Charles, and I didn't have the pleasure of knowing Mark, but I just want to extend my condolences officially now that I have more details about how egregious the situation was. I even had to step away for a minute, but I just want to, extend that to Avery and Karen and the rest of the family. Here's my question to Mr. Friedman and to anyone else who's with us that can perhaps answer this question. To Ms. Bond's point about the financial piece, a lot of what we see in New York is a lot of settlements. There's brutality, murders, and a lot of settlements. My question is, if we can't get to this issue through the elimination or at least the challenge of qualified immunity, is there a financial piece where the so-called officers, and I use that term very liberally, not literally, liberally, the officers can be held accountable financially, or instead of the taxpayers paying these settlements for murders and for brutality, instead of the taxpayers footing the bill, is there a way to make either cops personally liable financially, or the police unions financially liable for these settlements? That's my question. Thank you.
Hard to hold the police union liable. There are some places, Memphis is a place where officers are individually responsible for civil rights violations. As a result, very few civil rights lawsuits are brought because you're not going to end up ever getting paid. So it's important that people get paid. I would love to say that when cities pay large amounts, they change immediately. That doesn't seem to be true. We've certainly seen in New York and Chicago, lots of large verdicts without much change. But as a lawyer, of course, I like to believe that our litigation does help. And one way it helps is that through litigation, we can often dig into some of the things that the police department would like to keep secret and make them see the light of day. And I think that's important because police misconduct exists in secret. There's a reason they don't want us to know about internal affairs complaints and how they handle them. The Globe did a story recently, Channel 7 did a story. They don't even resolve them within 3 years. And when they do, they almost always resolve them in favor of officers. So some have said police officers should have insurance that would assure payment. Colorado has an interesting statute because what they say is if the officer did something that's really, really bad, the officer can be made to pay a portion of the judgment only up to $25,000, but at least it means they have something to lose. But the victims who are able to get compensation, if they win a judgment, will still be compensated primarily by the city, but also to some small amount by the officer. I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does, but it's a very grim answer. But I appreciate your forthrightness, Mr. Friedman.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I want to get back to the family now and just, obviously any questions or comments or statements that y'all want to make. And everybody else too, could you please make sure your phone is muted in the background? We're getting a lot of interference. Please make sure you're muted if you're not speaking. And anytime you want to speak, you can unmute yourself, but please make sure. So anybody from the family who has anything to add, you know, I want to get this back in your hands. Unmute yourself.
I just wanted to thank all of you all who are on the call for coming. It really means a lot to us. A lot of you all have been on this journey with us for a long time, from coming to rallies and speaking at Mark's funeral to writing, you know, writing Mark's stories and contributing. Whatever you guys do, it means a lot. One of the worst things about this is it's a very lonely, it's a lonely fight, and it's an uphill fight, and you kind of know that you're not going to win. So I just wanted to thank everyone.
All right. So I want to make sure, you know, we can continue on for some more minutes. I want to make sure if anybody else has any more thoughts, questions, suggestions. I know for myself, you know, the whole thing is like, what's next? So, you know, a lot of people now are calling, like the DJ Henry family is calling for the reopening of the case, or, you know, what have you. Like, what is in your minds of bringing attention to this case? How far do we want to go? Maybe somebody like Attorney Friedman can once again even talk about what is the possibility, statute of limitations, and all these type of things. Our best bet might be to do an awareness campaign, right? But you know, the legal recourse may be very difficult. I don't know what that looks like. You're on mute again.
There is no statute of limitations for murder, so criminally, that would be possible if the district attorney would bring such a case, but unlikely. With regard to any kind of civil suit, of course, the statute of limitations is long gone. So I think it's important to do what we're doing now, to speak publicly and to contact people in the Massachusetts legislature to say, you know, it's not just police unions. Real people are hurt. The families are still grieving years later. It's important that this legislature do something about it. Colorado has a great statute. I don't see why Massachusetts can't have something that's equally powerful.
All right. Anybody else got anything to add in? Questions, suggestions?
I just wanted to say, as people are starting to log off, and I really appreciate everybody's contributions. I don't know anything about the legality of this, but in what I can do, it's been really important that Mark's name is said, and that those of us that know him are telling his story in whatever platform you see fit. And I think that that's something that like we can all do, being on this call and knowing what we know now. And that's what I'm committing to as well. So.
All right.
I want to ask the question. Can we create, with everything that's going on right now with Black Lives Matter and all these cops who are being photographed and videotaped, you know, doing like bad policing? I know you said you can't go back and open this case up, but can we create an awareness around Christopher Carr? Because you said that he's had a history of violations and police brutality. So can we name those violations and bring awareness to the Boston Police Department that they're being watched, that they're on alert?
So for instance, you know, I have about maybe like 4, 5, or 6 like police related websites up here, you know, shot by police, Blackstonian, where all these cases are listed. We just launched a project called Bad Apple, you know, to get a phone number, because a lot of black cops have told me they don't like these dirty cops either. So I'm like, hey, well, let me make a method for you to do what you say to us to do. You see something, say something. You know, call the 1-800 number. So I made a 1-800 number for them to do it. No surprise, the phone's not ringing off the hook. And what ends up happening is that even when you can name these bad cops, the Globe just did an article on another one of the most highly decorated and highly compensated officers on the force. He's a captain and all this type of stuff. This guy has 17 complaints. You know, you can't have 17 complaints and work at Best Buy, right? So they know that there's an egregious problem. They know better than us because they have the records, right? They don't care. And right now, for, you know, some of the work that I'm doing, once again, the only way that I believe or that we're going to make a change in this is we have to change the rules by which they operate, whether that's state laws, whether that's municipal policies and procedures. And then also, too, there has to be swift and hefty discipline if you violate it, because it ain't about the rule. Do y'all know anywhere in Massachusetts you can't smoke a cigarette in a public park? But everybody does it because it's not enforced and there's no big heavy penalty. With cops, there is no hell to pay. So, you know, in fact, the records would show after an incident like this, they do better off career-wise. They get the awards and the honorees. They do better off career-wise, and they're heavily compensated. So yes, we should and we can name officers like Chris Carr and many others, McManus, Dunford. I mean, the list is long. Detective Danny Keeler was one of my worst favorites, who, thank God, is now retired. But, you know, he should have never been able to be retired. He should have been incarcerated. You know what I mean? So yes, that's an excellent point, and yes, we are on that. But unfortunately, I don't know. You can't shame people who do not have shame. And the last thing that I will say on this is, Cornell, I see you unmuted, because Cornell may want to talk about some of his prior work history as well, maybe.
Right. No, that was a perfect segue into what I was going to add to the equation. So, you know, good evening to the family. My name's Cornell Mills. I'm a longtime friend of Jamal's. I've been following this case from the very beginning. I actually remember some of you all from the State House rally and from some of the other events that we did. So, coincidentally enough, when Rasan Hall, who spoke about his time working at the DA's office, I was the only black male investigator at the office at the time that Christopher Carr was working there. So, you know, it's interesting that Rasan and I were both on this call, but don't let that confuse you, because we were probably 2 of 5 black people in that office during this time. So this is probably 2004, 2005. So one day while we were having our meetings at work, it had come to light that Chris Carr had used the N-word while he was out in the field. So me being the only black male investigator, I obviously, it was my duty to go and have a conversation with him about this and find out, you know, what this was about. So this is before he became a police officer. So the way it works, the investigator positions at the district attorney's office are all civilian positions. And for a lot of people, it's kind of like your precursor or the warm-up to become a cop. I did not follow that route as far as becoming a cop. So it was just a civilian position that ended and I moved on. But I can tell you from that incident that it was very clear to me, and I didn't need that incident to know, because you know, you live in Boston, you grow up in this city, you get to have a good radar of who the racist guys are and who the folks are who really have an issue with black folks. And I always felt that way about Christopher Carr. So when I heard that he was the one that was responsible for this murder, I wasn't surprised. The DA at the time, District Attorney Dan Connolly, is well known for rubber stamping any kind of police misconduct. He's never investigated anything. He's never found any wrongdoing. He's actually never even looked for any wrongdoing. And I actually ended up leaving that office under some very, tense situations involving police misconduct. So this is something that runs a little deeper than, just slaps on the wrist, because these folks know who's in the pipeline. They know about these cops before they join the force. A lot of them have relatives and have connections that allow them to still get on the force. But if you ask me, he's a racist. He was a racist before he was a cop. And the fact that he is a cop and has been one for this long, there needs to be a very closer look taken at just his record and why, this is all part of his record. And I have no problem saying these things publicly. If anybody is curious about the relationship with District Attorney Dan Connolly, Jamal and I are probably the reason why he's not currently the mayor of Boston, because he was running for mayor and he was a front runner, and he ran into us at a local one of his local stops, and really just had a horrible time answering some pretty basic questions, and his campaign was downhill from there. So I don't know what the link is. I think it's called Up in Flames. If anybody goes on YouTube,
Dan Connolly, Up in Flames or Down in Flames, one of those.
Yeah, something like that. But so Dan Connolly is the one who referred Christopher Carr to become a Boston cop. So that's the connection there that really, it sticks out, because he's also the person whose charge is to investigate him.
And Dan Connolly, too, was all too happy that this case did not land in his lap. So he was able to say, hands off, because it ended up, of course, in Plymouth County. But then it just alley-ooped on to his colleague, DA Timothy Cruz, who did the same damn thing anyway. What they all do, basically. All right, so I just want to make sure, anybody else have anything to add, questions, any journalists? Okay, King Downing, and I want to make sure we get some journalist questions in here if there are any still online. Yes, go ahead, King.
Yeah, I even raised that little hand just to see.
Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Maybe it was a fist. It might have worked better. So I have always offered my condolences to the family, and I don't always get a chance to do it publicly. So I want to offer it to you all and to everybody else who has stood by or been with them for the longest time. So I'm also a journalist. I'm not here in that capacity because I've been working in the family, making myself available in any way I can. I just wanted to, and also this is the first time with all of the families that I have worked with who have had loved ones killed by the police. This is the first and only time that has been a family that I already knew before it happened. So this is mixed feelings for me about having both of those at the same time. I wanted to go back to what I believe, in the families here they can speak up with, which is their focus for all of this in my eyes. And that is that while we've had a lot of conversation about reform, many families about reform as being the legacy that we pass down when our loved ones give their lives to prevent what happens in the future. But my sense here is that the family's real priority right now is to get justice. And Howard Freeman, props to you for being on the call. Howard Freeman said that in Massachusetts, there is no statute of limitations for murder. And so that means that there's no reason to drop the ball, even while moving towards reform, to try to get to the bottom of what happened here. And there are some concrete steps that may be able to be taken depending on what the Massachusetts attorneys think is possible, because I'm not admitted there, and also what the family is willing to do. And that is to constantly press forward for a continued investigation. There have been plenty of precedents for that in other places. In New York, we had a situation where a young man named Nicholas Hayward Jr. was 13 years old, and he was playing cops and robbers in the hallways of the building, and one of the police who was doing an upward patrol shot him. And there didn't seem to be any precipice reason for it other than the fact that he heard people running down the stairs, pulled out his gun, and as they turned the corner, he shot this 13-year-old. Rudolph Giuliani held up a replica 45 automatic weapon and said, this is why kids get shot when they carry things like this. It turned out he had a little orange rifle that could never have been mistaken. But after 20 years, we met with the new DA in Brooklyn, presented what evidence we were able to scrape together, knowing that their lost case files may have had this stuff buried anywhere, and had several meetings with him presenting the information. He agreed to reopen the case. My sense is that that might be the first thing that the family is looking for people to sit down with whatever resources we have, put all the documents together, present them, and see whether there's a way to open the investigation. And maybe the climate that exists now, which didn't even exist then, will loosen the wheels where files that were lost may turn up, other information that has been buried away or was conveniently covered up now that people have moved on may come to the surface. Maybe it would lead to an indictment. I know that if 10,000 people surrounded City Hall and refused to leave forever, I'll bet there would be an indictment. So there is always a possibility that conditions can change, just like Black Lives Matter has changed conditions. And so maybe our conversation can be about what information could be gathered, what the climate might be like in order to make that press, and how the other folks who are here, who may be more in the media or in the political side, can raise questions about the way this case happened, the things that Howard and Rahsaan laid out, who were clear violations, and use the climate today to press for that goal. And the last thing I want to say is, just so there's no mistake about it, I'm not a former prosecutor and nothing wrong with that. I just want you to know I'm an abolitionist. I do not believe that the present system can be fixed, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to press for every single reform that we can get to try to improve the situations that the McMullen family and others find. And Angela Davis says that we remind ourselves constantly that we are abolitionists so that we don't settle for reform. And she doesn't say so we don't press for reform. She says so we don't settle for it and just accept that we now have body cams, or we have a better law like in New York now, which allows the disciplinary records of police in New York State to be revealed, and the skeletons are starting to come out of the closet. And I'll leave it there.
All right, we're gonna get on our last couple things, and so I see Jake has his hand up, and Jake is, one of my partners on mass police reform and whatnot, who helped me create all these websites and the graphic for today and so on and so forth. And then after Jake goes, I want to make sure anybody here who is from the media that has any questions, let's get to it. All right, Jake, please go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. To the family, I have not met you guys before, but wanted to give you my deepest condolences. I've known about your story since it happened, and been working, like Jamal said, been working behind the scenes. I just wanted to bring up some of the slideshow and the things you shared earlier was very beautiful, and I know we're going to continue to push forward in terms of the case, and you have our support with anything of that. But if we can also be of any assistance in terms of helping you tell Mark's story, the rest of his story, and share some of his legacy, if there's any help we can provide with that website or whatever, you know how to contact Jamal. We would love to support you in telling more than just the story of his death, but also the story of his life. So that's it. And thank you once again, Jamal, for organizing this, man. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No doubt. All right, thank you. All right, so yes, please, anybody who is a journalist now, please chime in if you have a question or comment or something that we could try to, and listen, no guarantee you're gonna get an answer. We can only answer what we can't answer or discuss, but please.
I have a question. Hi, my name is Shira Stoll. I'm a video producer at NBC Boston and NECN. And I want to start, I just want to extend my condolences to the whole family. Thank you all for sharing. This has been a long call, but it's been very informative. And I'm just so sorry that you guys are still having these conversations and had to go through all this. My question actually is for Avery and Karen. you had mentioned that there was footage of the high-speed chase. Is that something that you ever received?
No. Mm-mm. I mean, there's footage because obviously it was on the news, like Katie said. So a TV station has it. We were not ever allowed to see it.
Because I wonder if there were street cams or something that the police might have. I'm surprised that it was just shown on the news. But were there any other photos or anything that they said that they had that they never gave to you? I'm just wondering because I'm asking because, you know, obviously the George Floyd case was very, very traumatizing because we all watched it, you know, and I'm wondering if there is some sort of footage that might be able, that we could potentially resurface that would show a little bit more into what the case would be. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, there might be. We've never seen it. They weren't trying to give us any evidence, as you can imagine.
Suggestion for you. You said you're in the video department?
Yes.
Of NBC, NECN, right? NECN,
mm-hmm.
Right? So at that time, I believe that's before there was a merger. I don't know how deep your archival footage goes. Go look. This happened on September 7th, 2011. And if I remember correctly at the time, I believe that there was helicopter footage of the highway. And I remember that there was footage of the final destination along the side of the highway by the little exit thing in the little grassy side of the highway thing. I know that I saw that with my own eyeballs on television. So, you know, the only games in town at that time were channel 4, 5, and 7. You guys were channel 4 at the time, right? So you are probably in a better position to find out if there is footage exists. And as I know as well, you guys pool helicopters, right? So I don't know where it is, but it, you know, if it exists and you could dig it up, that would be a great help. And obviously we know that the BPD has their own crime scene footage and such and so forth, which, you know, and the Plymouth County and the Stadies. But yeah, they have not been forthcoming.
Can I add something, Jamal, to that? And that is that the media historically have opened the doors to many of these situations by using open records requests to press the police departments for the material they have. I mean, there have been videos that were withheld that the media finally got, which actually began to indict cops, like some of the things that happened in Chicago. So you also have, in addition to your own internal search, to use the power of the First Amendment and your representation to get some of these materials.
Right. And that's why I was asking, so that if there, you know, if the family knew that there was this footage that we could ask for. But yeah, exactly. It's something worth looking into for sure.
Can I just add something too, Jamal? So two of the things that came up earlier was, number one, was that the dispatch had voiced to have him call off the pursuit. That was the first, you know, blatant, you know, whatever you want to call it, insubordination. And then secondly, there was a murder involving a young woman in Boston, some of you may know, called, her name was Evelyn Cepeda Barros, who was killed in a moving vehicle years before Mark's case. And after that case, if my memory is correctly, it was outlawed to shoot into a vehicle. And I don't know if that was a state law or what level that happened on, but
it was only BPD policy.
So, okay, so it became BPD policy that they were not allowed to shoot into a vehicle. And obviously, Chris Carr violated that policy also. So consider, you know, we have a new district attorney here in Suffolk County. She's very progressive. First Black woman to ever hold a position. That may be an angle to push the DA just to look at the misconduct of Christopher Carr as it involves this case.
Absolutely. Any other media there? Jeremy from the Globe, WHDH, Edit 3. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap it up? Okie dokie. All right. So, anybody from the family or extended family have any final words to say before we wrap it up?
Yes, please. It's Christine Vaughn. I just have a question for the family. Karen, Avery, one of my sisters said there's a GoFundMe page or something. You know, I'm not technologically savvy, so I could just prefer to send a check. But we have to have money in order to continue to pursue this. So how might we be able to help with that?
I can link the GoFundMe in the chat, but you can also access it on Instagram, and I'm going to be putting it on Facebook as well. Our Instagram is Justice for Mark McMullen. I'll include all of this information in the chat. And then on Facebook, it's Why Was Mark Shot?
Oh, and if everybody would be so good, I should have did this in the beginning. This is going to be a good test of how well we can all follow instructions. If everybody would be so good as to just put your email in the chat right quick. Put your email in the chat right quick, because when we're done, I can print this transcript out, and we will at least then be able to recontact all the folks who were on here, send any further information that we need, and so on and so forth. So if everybody could just put your email in the chat right quick, we will basically create a little impromptu email list. Avery, you're also going to put the link to the GoFundMe in the chat as well. This will also all be part of the transcript. When this is done, this video will now be preserved. I'll put it on YouTube and so on and so forth. But also, Avery, I will send you the transcript, so the copy of the record of this conversation in the chat and all the emails as well. Okay?
Great. Awesome.
All right. So everybody, thank you all for participating. Thank you all for listening. You know, I'll end on a very short personal note, just to say that, you know, when I met this family, I instantly fell in love. Like, just, you know how when you run into like good people, and, you know, your moms and your pops really did it to me. You know what I mean? They're like, you know, old school, salt of the earth. Okay? And you know, these tragedies befall all different types of families. So you know, would it matter if, you know, they were a family of bank robbers or something? No, it's still tragic, right? But sometimes when you get into a human connection, and like even those, like the pictures you showed, I did the Pinewood Derby. I was a little, you know, Boy Scout, Cub Scout, you know, guy like that. And me and Mark are not far off in age. And so circumstances like this and families like this, I feel like by a flip of a coin, we would have been cousins. Boston and Cape Verde and all these different little connections, and Roxbury, you know, Miss Marilyn lived right around the corner from my old crib. And, you know, we have to do better. And I had really wished and hoped, and I'm still hopeful, that Boston is going to show up. Because while we talk about these cases around the country, right, we cannot overlook what has happened right here in our own backyards, right, to our own people, at the hands of these folks who are paid with our tax dollars.
That's exactly
and
right.
we voters and citizens and homeowners. And so, you know, this is a tragedy, a travesty. And in my view, as I've said before, this case and a couple of others are the most egregious cases that I have seen in Boston in my history of studying and recording this. God bless you to the family. You have been nothing but dignified and loving and humble, and under all the pressure and the pain and the trauma, I have never once seen any of you all crack or conduct yourself in any manner that mom and dad or Mark himself would not be proud of. All right? Y'all are great people. I love you, and we all are committed to seeing this thing through.
Thank you, Jamal. We really appreciate it. Thank you for putting the call together, and we'll be in touch, everybody else, about next steps.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Love you.
Love you
Love
too,
you
Christine.
Peace.
Katie.
Love.
All right.
Sending y'all love.
Thanks,
Thanks,
honey.
honey.
And give love to brother and moms too, please.
Yeah, we'll do.
All right.
Love
Katie.
you, Karen.
Love you, Karen.
Love you all back.
Love you.
Love you, Karen. Love you, Avery.
Absolutely.
Lots of love.
Love you.
Love
you, Karen. All the best.
Simon.
Love you.
Sasha, hey, Sasha.
All right. Bless.
Love you, Karen.
guys.
Hey, Mary. Hey,
Love you.
love you. Thanks, Sonny.
Bye, guys. It's Marcy and Daniel. Love you.
Daniel, thank you so much.
We're here for you.
Thanks, Sonny.
Yes.
Thanks, Ellen.
I'm Susan, but that's okay.
No,
All
me
right.
too.
All right.
All right, everybody. So I'm about to hit the end button.
All right. Thanks, Jamal.
Thank you, Jamal. Bye.
All right.
Katie, bye.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, Katie.